an unexpected tariff decision from the White House, a 50% import tax directly targeting Brazilian goods, Brazil's president responds firmly, warning of proportional retaliation if the tariff takes effect. Where will this tariff war lead the U.S.-Brazil economy? Join us to follow all the tense developments in today's video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with the hottest news every day. Recently, U.S. President Donald Trump sent a letter announcing a 50% tariff on goods imported from Brazil, effective from August 1st, 2025. In the letter, President Trump stated that, in part, due to Brazil's covert attacks on free elections and the fundamental free speech rights of the American people, we will impose a 50% tariff on all Brazilian products entering the U.S. In the letter, President Trump also directed U.S. Trade Representative James Greer to launch an investigation into what he called Brazil's unfair trade practices, particularly related to the digital commerce sector involving American companies. Trump also criticized rulings from Brazil's Supreme Court, which he claimed have censored media companies. In an interview with a Brazilian television network, President Lula called the way his U.S. counterpart announced the 50% tariff, effective from August 1st, disrespectful.
Ele poderia ter ligado para o Brasil para dizer da medida que ele vai tomar.
He could have called Brazil to tell about the measures he was going to take. He didn't even send a letter. We didn't receive a letter. He posted on his website a complete lack of respect, which is typical of his behavior toward everyone. And I'm not obligated to accept this disrespectful behavior between heads of state, especially those with the largest export volumes: orange juice, steel, Embria, which exports heavily to the United States. To talk to see what their situation is, we will try to conduct every possible negotiation process. Brazil likes to negotiate. Brazil dislikes litigation. And if negotiations are exhausted, Brazil will apply the law of reciprocity. And I hope that business leaders will align with the Brazilian government. His letter through the website begins by saying that the witch hunts must stop. This is unacceptable. Firstly, because there is justice, and we are conducting a process with the right to the presumption of innocence for the victim. I myself will seek new markets for Brazilian products. That's my role, including telling business people, let's open new markets together. Because it's not easy for him to just tax others, it will also have consequences in the United States.
At the same time, the Brazilian president stated that he seeks a diplomatic solution to Trump's threat to impose tariffs, but affirmed that he would respond proportionately if the 50% tariff takes effect on August 1st.
Just from a diplomatic point of view, there are various measures to be taken, and Itamaraty will take them. We can appeal to the World Trade Organization, propose international investigations, demand explanations, but the main thing is the reciprocity law passed by Congress. And there's no doubt that first we'll try to negotiate, but if there's no negotiation, the reciprocity law will be put into practice. If he charges us 50%, we'll charge him 50%. I want Trump to take care of America for Americans. I want Americans to have a better life. I want Americans to live democratically. Just respect the right of Brazilians to live as well. The way you like the American people, I like the Brazilian people. It's my life. It's the people who define things. I'm Brazilian. I like Brazil, and I never give up.
Brazil's Vice President Geraldo Alckmin confirmed that the country's reciprocity law has been approved by the Brazilian Congress, and the decree will be issued today, tomorrow, or in the coming days. Meanwhile, Brazil's Minister of Agriculture and Livestock, Carlos Favaro, announced a plan to diversify trade partners, stating that Brazil will expand its markets as an alternative for its exports.
In the face of the U.S. government's indecent action in imposing a 50% tax on Brazilian exports, we are already taking proactive measures. I called the main representative entities of the most affected sectors, the orange juice sector, the beef sector, and the coffee sector, so that together we can expand the actions we have been taking during President Lula's 2.5 years in government. At this moment, I will reinforce these actions, seek the most important markets in the Middle East, South Asia, and the Global South, which have great consumer potential and can be an alternative for Brazilian exports. Brazil's diplomatic actions of reciprocity are being taken.
Gilberto Braga, an economics expert at the IBMEC Business School, warned that President Donald Trump's decision to increase tariffs on Brazil's exports by 50% interferes with Brazil's internal affairs and could harm both economies.
President Trump's letter justifying this new tariff makes reference to the country's legal, political, and ideological issues, so it constitutes interference in the country's internal affairs. Using a trade relationship as an excuse and based on premises that are not necessarily true. There is a cascading effect in this taxation that could, for example, make the sale of aircrafts and Brazilian exports unfeasible both to the US and to the rest of the world. So, indirectly, both economies lose. American and Brazilian consumers alike will have to pay more for products, and in some way this harms both economies. A lot can happen before August 1st, so it's quite likely that diplomacy on both sides will begin to engage in dialogue and reach an economic agreement that makes it feasible to maintain trade relations between the two countries. What Trump did with China, Canada, and the European Union suggests that this is a process similar to a chess game, where you move a piece but haven't yet reached the king.
Traders have also stated that American consumers may face a sharp increase in the prices of essential goods such as coffee and orange juice. In terms of agricultural products, Brazil produces nearly half of the world's Arabica coffee and is the largest producer of orange juice globally, accounting for 80% of global exports. Approximately 1/3 of the coffee consumed in the US, the world's largest coffee market, comes from Brazil, with the country exporting about 8 million bags annually, each weighing around 60 kilograms. Over half of the orange juice sold in the U.S. also originates from Brazil, underscoring the country's critical role in the supply chain for essential consumer goods.
As far as we're concerned, there's no risk of that. What happens is that when you have a market as important as the United States, which is the largest consumer of coffee in the world, and Brazil is the second, if you have a tariff increase, you will also have an impact on consumption. That's why I told you about the 76% of Americans who drink coffee, because if you have a tariff, you increase the price of the product. And the impact is two ways. It not only harms the origin, it also harms the consumer. We think that at the moment you may have a smaller volume and slightly slower exports, but all this within the context of everything will settle down and be negotiated. We don't really see that happening if we don't import coffee from Brazil.
Não será importado café do Brasil, isso realmente a gente não vê.
Essa diferença de produção, né? O produtor vendendo café a 2.500, vamos falar aí.
You look at the context of the partnerships that the Brazilian government has with various destinations and various countries, you have to look for alternatives in this case. But what we understand, I'll say it again, is that with a bit of calm, talking things through, neither one side nor the other will be victorious. With such high tariffs, everyone loses out.
The U.S. reliance on imported orange juice has increased in recent years due to a sharp decline in domestic production, particularly in Florida, caused by citrus greening disease, hurricanes, and unusual cold spells. A report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture earlier this year forecast that the 2024 to 2025 orange harvest will drop to its lowest level in 88 years, leading to a record low in orange juice production. Meanwhile, Brazilian protesters expressed outrage in Sao Paulo during a march initially held to support the government's economic policies, but quickly shifting focus after U.S. President Donald Trump announced the new tariffs. The crowd, including members and supporters of the ruling Workers' Party, gathered with flags and banners in support of Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva.
Brazil does business with other countries, so just as we depend on them, they also depend on us, and perhaps even a little more. But it's time for them to understand that Brazil, Latin America, is not their backyard. We can't just be taxed and think that's okay. President Lula spoke yesterday saying Brazil is sovereign. So within this trade, there will also be government intervention. It won't stop there because they'll lose out too. It's collaborative, and for the United States, it never was. Everything has always been taken by force.
To date, the United States has announced new reciprocal tariffs on 21 other economies, ranging from 20% to 40%. All notification letters contain nearly identical content, and these tariff rates will take effect on August 1st, 2025.